All right, my arty ghouls and goblins. Today we are doing the spell book or book from Hocus Pocus, one of my favorite Halloween movies. So I went ahead and prepped my canvas in black, and then I did my drawing or traceable. As you can see, I did the traceable just to make sure I got this correct. And I'm kind of guessing when it comes to the eyeball color because every picture I found was unclear, and some of the remakes and samples that I've seen that other people have done have different colored eyes. So I'm guessing, and I figure a pop of color won't hurt. So with that being said, I'm going to start with the eyeball today. So I'm going to take a small brush. Oops, here it is. And I'm going to mix a little bit of green with some white, and then a tiny touch of the dark brown burnt umber, whatever color you're using. And I'm going to come in and just do the color of the eye. We'll go back in and put the pupil in a little bit, but for right now I'm just putting the green down. And I'm going to clean my brush, wipe the excess water off, and then I'm going to come in here and do the white portion of the eye. Now, Book's eyelids are never completely fully open, so I'm leaving room for eyelids, an eyelid above and an eyelid below. Okay, so we have that started. Now the bulk of this is a light brown. From what I understand, the book is supposed to be made from human skin. I do not recall if that is mentioned in the movie. So what I'm going to do is take some burnt sienna and a little bit of white to make kind of a lightish brown color here. And I'm just going to come in and fill in. Now remember, we're going to go over this with details, so if there's some streakiness or anything like that, you don't really have to worry about it. So I'm just filling in the spine, and then we'll add the details, and we'll fill in the body of the book. And as always, I have my glazing medium here in case I need to thin out my paint, which shouldn't be too much of a problem, but just in case. And Book is ancient, so you don't have to worry too much about straight edges and perfect lines. When you're doing this. So I'm leaving the area where the metal emblem is on either corner, and I'm going to leave a small gap where I have the stitch marks, just to make it a bit easier to see them later instead of having to guess and repaint them, because these are a little bit of a difficult placement, you know. I suppose it doesn't matter as much if they're not exact, but it's just the way I'm doing it. So feel free to cover them up if you want and not leave that gap. Oops, of course, I cover up my stitches there. Oh well. When I was trying to figure out things to paint from Hocus Pocus, I was so torn. Last year, I did a variation of the bubbling cauldron that we did the other day. I didn't have words on it. I had like cartoony versions of the witches. And I didn't really do anything else from the movie, but I wanted to do the black flame candle. I wanted to do Billy. There were so many things. Jinx, you know, or Binks. I'm sorry, Binks, not Jinx. And all these things. But I've always wanted to paint Book. And I thought, well, you know what? I can do those other ones next year. It's been an interesting time of year for me this year because I am also managing a big Halloween thing at my kids' school where they required quite a bit of artwork. So I've been really inundated with Halloween, which has been fun. And yes, I yammer on. It's already starting to look like him. Okay. All right. So I've got the basics done. So I'm going to switch over to my liner brush and I'm going to come in just with some burnt umber, dark brown, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to come and do where the spine meets the book, or the cover, I should say. And again, I'm not worrying too much about perfect lines here. I'm just getting some color on the canvas. And then I'm going to come in wherever there's stitches or whatever you want to call them, scars, I don't know, wherever the seams are on here. And I'm going to take the burnt umber and just paint with that dark brown if you're using other paints. So this is going to be a fun tutorial. I'm not going to worry too much about realism. I'm going to try to make it look like it's popping off the page, but I'm not going to obsess over it as I would for one of the pieces that I sell, because I think I mentioned in another tutorial that could then take days to complete, many hours, which we just don't have. All right. So one really fun thing I'm going to be able to teach you is metallics, because these snaky things here are silver in color. So I will teach you how to do that in just a minute. So I'm mixing a deep gray color, and this is going to be in between where the snake coils are. And again, not worrying too much about placement or straight lines. And then coming in on the sides where it ends, it's got kind of like a metal plate underneath it, it looks like. Or maybe it's carved into the metal plate. Okay, now I'm going to lighten that and make an even lighter gray. And then we're going to come in and just fill in the snake. So anywhere there's, you know, part of the snake, you're just going to fill in with this light gray. Okay, and then the same thing up here. Okay, so now to add dimension to the snake, you're going to come in wherever, I'm just going to make a little bit of a darker batch here by adding a touch of black, and wherever the pieces of the snake meet, you're just going to add a touch of that darker gray, kind of gives that illusion of a shadow there. And then you can come around the sides a little bit. I wouldn't worry too much about it, just to kind of give it the illusion of it being kind of rounded. And the same thing up on the head, go around the edge. And now I'm going to take a good deal of white. Oops, there's some brown in there, so clean that off. So just some white. I keep hitting the brown. A little bit of my glazing liquid. And I'm going to come in, I'm wiping some of it off, and I'm going to come in and do a few highlights in here. So just kind of coming along the side, maybe a little bit here, right around the edge. If you remember, the glass metal is very similar in that it has those same sort of shiny reflective properties. And then I'm gonna wipe that off my brush, come with the original color, and just blend a little. You don't have to blend too much because sometimes there are harsh highlights for these. But just blend just a smidge. Just blend a bit. If you take off too much, just add a bit more. And I'm gonna add spots for the eyes. Kind of give that a little bit. I'm just cleaning up around the edges as needed here. Okay. Okay, and we'll do the same thing for the other snake. Come around where it meets. And then we'll add the highlights. Okay, come in with that white. And this one has more of a highlight around other areas. Some the same, but it okay. And then we'll come back in with the original color, blend a little bit. All right. I'm just gonna come in, oops, too much water. With that, and just fill in a bit in between where I had missed. Okay, let's see. And I'm just coming in here, and some of these edges have a bit of a highlight. So I'm gonna come in where that is. And this one has a bit of a highlight too. And I might just try to blend that a little bit just by pulling with the brush. Okay. So you can see I'm giving it the kind of 3D look without being obsessive. Metallics can be very hard to paint, so I'm not trying to go down that kind of slippery slope of catching every single glimmer and every single, you know, shadow, because we could be here for days recording and painting. So I'm just coming in, catching the essence of it. Okay, I had a little visitor while I was painting here, so I had to stop for a minute. But I went ahead and filled in the, I guess it's the clip or whatever this is where the eyeball is. And because the paint is still wet, it's kind of self-blending in some areas. So I'm okay with that. And then where it doesn't self-blend, we'll do it for it. Okay. So I'm going to take the original color, and just like we did when we blended with the other things in other tutorials, we're just going back and forth. You notice I didn't do that with the snakes. That is such a small area that would be incredibly hard to move back and forth like that. So we're just giving the illusion with the snakes there. Kind of same thing here with this little gem that's there because it's just so tiny. It's so hard to really get much detail in there. And speaking of that gem, that's another thing I couldn't really figure out if it's actually the skin color or if it is something else. So I'm just going with skin color, and then we'll add a little highlight to it. All right. So now with the clip here, there's some texture. So I'm gonna come through and add a bit of the highlight where I see it, and then I'm gonna come through and add some texture. So there, this little sucker's got quite a bit of highlight here and quite a bit of a highlight here. There's a little bit of one down in there, but it's really just like that. And if you need to blend it, feel free to blend it. I'm happy with how that is. And there's maybe a smidge of a highlight there and there. Okay, so now there's some texture. There's what appears to be dots that go around the circle. They're not in here, they're just around here. So I'm going to take the darker color, and I'm just going to make sure my brush has a good point, and I'm just going to come through and just do some dots around. Okay, if they look a bit too harsh, you can come in with your color and tame them down, but I'm just going to make mine a little bigger to make them look a bit more like indentations. And then in between some of them, there's what looks like a tiny bit of a highlight. So I may come in with just a tiny bit of a highlight in between and tame it down as needed. Just adding more texture ever so often. There we go. Okay. Just fixing a little bit of a mess up I did. Okay. Make this side a smidge darker under here, and then blend it. Okay. Now there's that intense highlight here, which I forgot to put. So now I'm really going to be able to focus my attention on the skin here in just a minute. I'm going to repeat the metal process on the big snake here down the side. And this one is a lot lighter, so we're not going to do quite as many shadows or anything on it, only really to showcase that this sucker is sticking up. It has texture. And again, I'm not worrying too much with perfection here. I will repeat myself 9 million times. I know there's a lot of people that have a hard time not doing things to perfection. And they don't like randomness. And I'm honestly one of those people when I'm doing the artwork that I sell. But for these classes and tutorials, where I'm trying to teach more of the basics, I try to let go. So it looked like the metal plate was a bit darker, which is why than the snake. Like the snake had the bulk of the highlights here. So that's why I'm doing this. Now I'm going to come in even a smidge darker. And I'm going to come in just around the edges of the snake here. Make it look like it's popping. Then I'm going to come back in with the lighter color and blend. So there's not that real hard edge there. Okay. It already looks like he's popping off. So now we are going to come in with the highlight down the center because there's a lot of highlighting on this guy to make him really look like he's popping. So I'm going to come just along the center because it's rounded. So the center is going to be the highest point, which would be the point that has the most highlight. And at the head, I'm going to do like almost a Q-tip mark. Wipe that off, come in with the lighter, and then we're going to blend on the sides. Now this gets very narrow, so in some places the blending is going to be really hard to do. So you can always go back with your lighter color, your highlight color, and add more if you need to, as I'm going to right now. Just come in. So it's reflections. Remember, it's reflecting the light. So you really want to have some bright marks. There. And I got him a wee bit skinny, but I'm not gonna freak out over it. So now the snake's head has some like eyes and stuff on it, and it's got a little bit of a pattern. So I'm just coming in, just doing some dots of a darker color here, and then I'll come straight in with some highlight, and right behind where the eyes are, I'm adding a bit of a highlight, and where the head meets the body, I'm putting a highlight. Okay, now the very edge of this metal plate, or whatever you call it, has a bit of a highlight. So I'm just going to go down the side with it. And on this side as well. And again, we'll blend it out. So if it's pretty intense, don't worry about it. Okay. Now we're going to take that darker and just blend. Whoop. See how it's smoothing out? That's what we want. Just blend away. And my white dried a little bit, so I'm going to come back in with just a smidge of the white so I can blend away. Add some more dark in there because I lost some of it. Blend, blend, blend. Blend. Okay. So it's not perfect, but again, we're not worried about that. We're just worried about the illusion of metal, light, and shadow. Just coming in and fixing some highlights I think I lost. I'm just fixing the shapes on here where I feel like I've lost some of the definition. And glazing liquid or water is really your best friend when you're working with stuff like this. Okay, now I'm going to come in with some pretty intense highlights. There's some areas that really have a really strong sheen to them. So I'm going to come in and just add a few touches here and there for those. Like right in the corner here. And a few spots over here where it looks like there's some little imperfections in the metal. And right in there. Okay. I think I'm going to leave that alone now. And I'm going to come in and do the texture for the skin. Okay, so we've got that light skin color here. So now I'm going to come in and start adding some darker shades. So I'm going to come in kind of mixing a similar yet slightly darker color. And I'm just going to start adding some texture in here. Just a little bit of texture, and we'll go over this again. But I'm just adding just a smidge of color and texture in here. Wherever I think these, these bumps are for the spine. I went over on my black, but that's okay. And we'll go over this, so you don't have to worry too much about how you're doing this. And I'm going to come in and do the same thing, this time adding a touch of burnt umber or dark brown in here. Around where the stitches are, there seems to be quite a bit of texture, like the edges. The edges of the plate, the edges of, so this could be, shadows, it could just be texture from the skin, leather, whatever you want to call it, kind of puckering. Just coming in, adding depth. I went over that metal plate I worked so hard for. All right. All right. So now we're going to come in with the lighter version again, like that original skinish tone that we did. And this time I'm going to thin it out a bit, and we're going to come in and just, I think I need more white. Just add some more, just kind of come in and kind of blend in random places and just come in where this is. My children are fighting upstairs. Just come in and just redo that and define it a little bit, kind of moving into that darker color that we added. And then we're going to come in again and we're going to come in, and where they meet, we're just going to blend them, okay? So just run your brush all along those edges. If it's not blending, add some more color and maybe some glazing liquid or water and just blend. Remember, no perfection. I will say that over and over again. It does not have to be perfect. Does not have to be perfect. Too much dark, too much light, then add some more dark around. Blend, 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 blend. And blend. Touch it up as needed. Blend away. And he looks, kind of rough, so seriously, you don't have to smooth anything out. The patches, the marks, they're okay. I've got some areas where there is a bit of the original black color coming through. Normally I would be stressing about that, but right now I'm not worried at all. So we're gonna come and do the same thing with the spine, except mine has dried up, so I'm coming in again and adding the marks real quick while it's still, so that I can do this quickly and be able to blend. Just coming in, adding lots of texture. we'll play around with that again in a minute. So this is looking pretty good. And what I am gonna do is take a little bit of white and making a lighter color to just come in every once in a while and get a bit more of like a highlight in here. All right, so Kidlets needed me again. So I'm just coming in and adding a little bit of a lighter texture here and there. If you need to blend it, you can with the darker, if you kind of go a little haywire with it, but not necessary. All right. Come in just with a touch of a darker color here. And I'm gonna touch up some of my stitches here because I did end up painting over some of them. Okay. Now this next part is going to be optional. If you want to add the actual stitch marks, you can. Again, it is optional. If you like the way this looks, then leave it like this. Okay, I take that back. It's not the next part. I have to finish the eye. Okay, so the eye is just a smidge darker than the rest. So I'm gonna come in, mix a little bit of a darker color, just a little bit, and I'm gonna come in all the way around in here. I'm gonna do the skin around the eye, the actual eyeball, I mean. And then I will come in and touch up the eyelids to show some depth there. So while that's drying, I'm gonna come back in and do a second coat of the green. And the white for the eyeball. I got the eyeball, the eye color. I'm gonna go in and do a pupil for it real quick. Just with some black. And just come in and do a pupil right in the center. Okay. Now, the skin should be dry. So I'm gonna come in just with plain dark brown, burnt umber, whichever color you're using. And right around where the eyelids go, I'm just coming around with just a ring of the dark brown. is a smidge darker to that lid there. And you can blend if needed. And then I'm gonna come in with the lighter color we made, maybe make it a tiny bit lighter, and do some highlights in here. Maybe need a bit lighter than that to make it stand out. That, and then underneath, like that. Okay, I'm gonna add some more depth here with some more burnt umber right around the edge where the ring is, the clip or whatever it's called. Give it some more depth and a smidge of a lighter color here and there around the skin here to really show that it's got some texture in there. Get some light. And blend and blend. And then I'm going to really come in with the stark white for those lids because I really want that to show that that is a highlight. Take my glazing medium, blend that down a smidge. And then I think I want a shine to the eye. So I'm just going to add a little dot there where the color is. Now I'm going to come back to the spine here. And try to blend some more color in here. I think it was just too wet before for me to do it properly. And now that it's dry, I can come in and do it properly. Wipe it off, blend, 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 in, and blend, blend, blend. Just keep blending, trying to get that texture. Oops. And I'm just trying to come back in and continue to blend these together. to just keep blending until you're happy with it. I'm going to come in here just with a smidge darker. And just blend that to get the texture. It's really a lot of playing around. I know I've used that verbiage a lot in these tutorials, but it's true. You have to play around with the color to get it where you want it. Okay, so now I'm going to come in just with the black. I'm going to do this off camera, but I'm going to clean up my lines a bit around the edges, and but I'm going to sign my name a bit. I think I'm going to do probably the light skin color here. Woo! Water overload. And just do that. I'm going to clean up with the black, and then I will do the big reveal. Okay, and of course I forgot to mention these stitches, because I did say that is an optional thing. So the stitches are really just little lines, and you can take any of the colors. It's kind of a lighter color. You can take any brown, just make sure it's a bit lighter than the skin and a bit lighter than the of course I have too much water on my brush. You're probably used to me saying that now. Just make sure it's lighter than everything else you've got going on there. And it's kind of like the stitches on Oogie Boogie, where they just kind of curve a little bit. You can switch up the direction if you want to. You don't have to. Okay, so there's some stitches. You can, if you want, come through and do a tiny line. I'm not sure if I'm gonna like this or not, so we'll see. Whoop. Okay. Just a tiny line down the middle. Yeah. Just to add even more dimension to this. Absolutely not necessary. And there we have it. Let's do our big reveal. There you have Book from Hocus Pocus.